Andy Stanley from Northpoint Community Church, one of America's largest megachurches, is making headlines again, and for all the wrong reasons. It all centers around the LGTV conversation, which he has been tied to in the past. Andy Stanley seems to be fully willing to affirm LGTV people in their lifestyle, and this video is going to show you that beyond a shadow of a doubt. Recently, a video was released from its youth ministry leadership. It was like a training in which they fully embrace the LGTV lifestyle and a change of gender for one of their students.
What eventually happened was the school system, the family, the extended family, were all using different name and pronouns for this child, but their local church would not do it. Their local church said, nah, because we've known him since he was a little boy, we're not going to start saying her. So not here, not at our church. We've known you too long to be able to do that. And so everywhere this child went in life, they were saying you were one thing, but only at church, they had to pretend to be something else. And they had to leave that church. And they finally came here, started talking to our care ministry staff.
So we are going to take a look at this in this video today. Hi, my name is Joshua Simone, and my ministry's name is called Torn Curtain because the temple curtain was torn in two during Jesus' death on the cross, symbolizing a new covenant, a better covenant, and direct access to a relationship with God the Father. Let's start off with how God reveals himself to us in the masculine. He is not a mother, but a father. And when Jesus came to this earth, he came as a man. And so we're all starting off with basic concepts in the Christian faith. We'll start with gender. So hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. I am working hard to bring you the best Christian content. I'm really putting in a full-time effort. So in some aspects, I have 2 full-time jobs, running a company during the day and doing this content on nights and weekends. It's been a tough time, but well worth it in the end. So Andy Stanley is the son of the late Charles Stanley, who I have a huge affinity for. Charles Stanley will always have a special place in my heart. I remember countless hours of spending Sunday mornings listening to his sermons on television and was just so wonderful. Well, I don't have that same affinity for his son, Andy. On this channel, I will be covering the tough and controversial subjects. I do this because we need to have the hard conversations in order to grow in your faith. This is part of the discipleship process, how current events and current trends shape our spirituality. Sometimes we're not even aware of this. Richard Foster said this, I usually have the newspaper in one hand and the Bible in the other hand. So we need to read the Bible in light of the culture that we're in and what's going on in the world around us to help us navigate the water. And this is a tough subject on the LGTV conversation. I'm not going to say that I have this topic all figured out, okay? I've done training in this area, pretty extensive training, and worked with the LGTV community. I love them. I have a special heart for them, but I have been trained in this, and so I can kind of navigate this subject a lot better than most. But this video from Andy Stanley's church was leaked to social media, and it's beyond shocking on many levels. It shows Andy Stanley's ministry not only embracing the LGTV community, which is a good thing, but he is going one step further in affirming them. As Christians, we are called to love all people and treat people with dignity and respect. Me personally, I look to find the image of God that was within each and every person, no matter how lost it seems that they are. At the same time, this doesn't mean that we agree with everybody on their ideology in life. So for me personally, and I believe the Bible teaches this, is a marriage is between one man and one woman, and there are only 2 genders. And I hold these beliefs because I feel this is clearly stated in the Bible. But the world would try to trap Christians, and I'm going to show you right now how they're going to do it. It's the idea that if you don't agree with everyone on everything, that means that you hate people. They're going to move right to the hate card and say, oh, this is hate speech. Christians hate people. That ministry is a hate ministry. But the truth is I don't hate anyone. Even I don't hate my enemies, because the Bible calls me to love them and pray for them. So I just want to make it clear, I love the LGTV community, and I had led Bible studies for them in the local church. It was one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done. It was challenging, but I have a real heart for this community. and it really breaks my heart. I want to do everything that I can to reach them, and I want to reach the ones that really have questions about God or looking to learn more about Him, that population. But I do not agree with the LGTV lifestyle and behaviors, but I love the people themselves and see that they were created in God's image. But we have to understand this, so you will fall into the trap of the snare of the world. They will guilt you into trying to affirming them in all that they do, and you don't want to fall into that trap. I personally think the church needs a lot more ministry on this subject, a lot more outreach to the LGTV community. The churches aren't addressing this in a biblical manner. I heard one Bible teacher say that this is the Goliath of our generation, and nobody is stepping up to fight it, to talk about it, and I kind of agree. We aren't reaching this community for Christ in many cases. Many churches don't know how to reach this community, and it does require some training in it. So I don't suggest that you try to do it unless you get some training and education in this area. But I do appreciate that Andy is one of the few people and one of the few mega churches that is willing to try to do this. And I think that Andy and his church, they really do try to love this community and these people. But at the same time, Andy has crossed the line and he has gone apostate, which is tied to the end times. It says that many people would go astray, would fall away from the core doctrines of the faith. That as the end times comes and as darkness increases and lawlessness and sin abound, that many would grow hardness of heart and begin teaching doctrines of demons. And so I believe that Andy has went away from the faith. Certainly we pray for him. And for me personally, he's gone so far, particularly in this video, that he is outside the Christian faith. I wouldn't call him a Christian brother or sister. So we can love the sinner for sure, but hate the sin. And Andy seems to love the sinner, but embrace the sin. And that's the problem that I have in this. So we're going to get into this shocking video that was leaked on social media. And it's with a staff member of their student ministry fully embracing and affirming a student for gender changes. This is not a video for children, so please get them out of the room at this point. But before we get into this topic and play the video, let me do a quick 30-second promotional off. So this video today is brought to you by Birch Gold Company, one of your most trusted sources in buying gold and silver and adding it to your investment portfolios, your IRAs, and 401ks, so you could do that tax-free. It's a way that I can fund the ministry, but offer a product that I personally believe in. Hey, I'm not getting rich here. I promise this money will go straight back into the ministry for daily expenses. But me and my family are investing in gold and silver. And with everything changing in the financial landscape right now, many are people seeing this as a perfect opportunity to invest in gold. Demands for Birch Gold have never been higher. Everybody is buying gold, from governments to banks and individuals. Why? Because they see it as a safe investment that will increase in value. People are looking for a real sure bet with their retirement funds. They're looking for something that they know has value. Well, people are really turning to gold. Gold recently hit $3,000, and many people feel it will go much higher in the future. So consider investing in gold and silver today. Get your free gold kit from Birch Gold, which will tell you everything you need to know about investing in gold with no obligation to buy. They are running a limited time offer of up to $20,000 for free gold for qualified offers. And so what do you have to lose? Why not check it out? So to get your free gold kit, go to birchgold.com/torn curtain. That's BIRCH gold.com/torn curtain for your special promotional offer. So now let's get into this shocking video of Stanley's church staff member affirming a gender transition.
There's one family in particular that's very helpful for me. Their journey first started when their student was 5 years old. And these parents handled it so well, and this family first started going to a child psychologist and seeing a medical specialist. Then over time, they started using different pronouns at home, but only at home. They were not using these pronouns in school. They weren't even asking an extended family to use those pronouns yet. They weren't asking friends to do it yet. Then a big step was to pick a new name from the other gender so they could start using that. But once again, only the new name around the home. And they could start wearing different clothing. First, just one day a week. Once again, only at the home. The next big step was going to the extended family, the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins, to say, hey, will you start using this name and these pronouns for our child? Medical intervention started for this student. If we're talking about something in middle school, more than likely, medical injections are going to be about stopping puberty as opposed to having a surgery. That will probably come later in life. It would be just a matter of, hey, let's slow down or stop puberty from even starting for this child. Now, at this point, the next big thing that's going to happen is them starting to ask the public to start using a different set of pronouns and a different name. They finally go to the school system, ask them to start using those different pronouns. And what eventually happened was the school system, the family, the extended family, were all using different name and pronouns for this child, but their local church would not do it. Their local church said, nah, because we've known him since he was a little boy, we're not going to start saying her. So not here, not at our church. We've known you too long to be able to do that. And so everywhere this child went in life, they were saying you were one thing, but only at church, they had to pretend to be something else. And they had to leave that church. And they finally came here, started talking to our care ministry staff, and we realized, oh my goodness, we cannot be the last place a student feels comfortable. That's the opposite of our goal for church, is to be the last place you feel comfortable talking about anything. But we've got to understand, it's a really, really long journey for these families. I mean, it's years and years and years and years and years to make this change. In fact, it's very difficult surgeries to go through later in life. In fact, there's upper surgeries and bottom surgeries, and many people can go through the upper surgery, but the bottom surgeries are extremely invasive and sometimes don't even work. And so it may not even happen or be a possibility for every person who wants to make this change. So knowing how long this journey really is, it's important that we as staff and as small group leaders care for these students, knowing this is not going to be a flip of the switch and be taken care of next week. This is going to be a 5 or 6 year process. And the best part is, that's exactly what our strategy is already made to do, to track along for multiple years with the students. 75% of people do not make a full transition. As we are caring for the student, a lot of the ministry will be to the parents. Many times, we're helping the parents understand the student's journey as well. Many times, the parents don't know what to do. It was a big deal for them to walk into a church with their child and hope someone was going to love them. In fact, just the other day, a student that we walked with from middle school through high school on their change, and we did the whole thing, the pronouns and choosing a different name, and there was a ceremony, and they started doing hormone shots, and they're off to college. Well, they're freshmen in college, and they just reached back out to us to say, hey, now that I'm a freshman in college, I realize that wasn't true about me, but I'm going to go back to my old name and my old pronouns. And we're like, okay, well, I'm glad you have a better understanding of who you really are. And I'm so thankful that this student's small group leaders didn't draw a hard line in the sand somewhere and say, nah, not here. We used to know you when, but we walked alongside the student and his family because we had no idea where their journey is going to go.
Okay, so you saw it there in that video. Now we know Andy Stanley's church is not only embracing the LGTV community, but they are affirming them in this as well. This story was of a 5-year-old child that they helped with their journey in changing genders. And basically the whole epiphany was this child went to another church someplace and the church wouldn't affirm them in their gender. And thank God we still have churches like that that'll stand up for the truth. And we should stand up for the truth in a compassionate manner, as compassionately as we possibly could. But church should be a safe place for all people. Let me make that very clear. And church should be a safe place for the sinner as well. But when you embrace the sin, then you are not loving or helping these people at all. That is not what compassion is. And when the Bible says that Jesus had compassion for sinners, and the woman caught in adultery said, go and sin no more. Okay, so we're not to embrace people in their sin, but we are still to love people and try to be as compassionate as I can. Again, I love the LGTV community. I have a heart for them. But I believe what the Bible says on this matter, that marriage is between a man and a woman, and there are only 2 genders. And those issues are affirmed again and again in the Old and New Testament. And that is why I can't embrace this community on these issues. But I want to make it clear I don't hate anybody. As a matter of fact, I really love this community. But God has outlined standards for gender and the family within the Bible. And I'm going to stick with God's views on this. But in no way do we ever hate on anyone. And if people like this comes to your church, you should treat them with respect, compassion, and dignity. Be willing to hear them out, create a space for them. But that doesn't mean embracing them. It doesn't mean affirming them. And in fact, I go out of my way to minister to this community because I realize the church has been very passive aggressive on this subject and has really hurt a lot of people from this community that come to churches, okay? Because as much as this issue is black and white in scriptures, it's not so black and white in application. So we have to be compassionate in people and see where they are in the faith journey and then help them get to the next level and where they're at. And so no matter what situation that I see people in, I try to treat them with a lot of compassion, respect, dignity, just affirming them as a person and made in the image of God. But that doesn't mean that we just say yes to everything and we affirm them completely, okay? So I spoke with a megachurch pastor last week, and he was talking about addressing the LGTV subject and gender issues in his Sunday sermon. And he was just saying it was a really difficult week, that he did anticipate that there were going to be a lot of challenges involved in this. But he said that most people didn't give him the most feedback or pushback on the gay issue. What he got the most amount of feedback was for the gender issue, which I found to be pretty shocking. And in this video, it had to deal with the person changing genders, okay, at Northpoint Community Church. But he was hit with a lot of emails and phone calls after the sermon, and that was just a pretty difficult week for him. But this is exactly why we need to talk about these stuff. This is a discipleship issue. The church should be teaching on sexuality and sex a lot more, okay? And the church should be teaching on gender issues as well, okay? So part of the reason why the world is experiencing this gender situation that we have, which is basically a crisis at this point, is because the church has not stepped up and began to teach people and disciple people on sex and gender. So this is more and more important because more and more people are identifying as LGTV, okay? So it could be, depending on the poll, up to 30%, where when I was a younger guy myself in college and stuff, I grew up in New York City, so I've always had a good sense of the LGTV community being around. I went to school in the Village, which is considered one of the most friendly LGTV places in the world at NYU. And so I have a lot of exposure to the community, but back then they were saying that the gay population was, maybe as high as 8% maybe, and most people wouldn't even go that high. Well, in this generation, some people are saying it goes as high as 30%. So this is something that we must teach on, and the church has not stepped up in this, and the world has filled in that space. And we're seeing that there's a lot of confusion around sexuality and gender. And I think Facebook recognizes 60 different sexualities and genders. Okay, so I probably named 10. So I don't know where they got 60 from. But so we're going to get into Shane Winning's video in a minute, where he does more of a firm stance, gives a biblical perspective on the matter. But just to address that Andy Stanley video from his church, that was like shocking, the level that they were willing to go to really embrace this person's gender. First, they were using pronouns at home, right? And then they picked a new name for the new gender. And then once a week, they can start wearing clothing. They had a whole system for this whole entire situation that went over the years. Then they started to get extended family members involved to embrace this new gender and this new name. And then they go to medical intervention, which first, as they starts with injections, then maybe surgery down the road. And this is all a Christian video. This is coming from a Christian music. Then they start asking the public now that all the friends and family have embraced the gender. Now they're going to start to reach the step where they're asking the public to use the pronouns and a different name. And the local church wouldn't embrace this person, so they were able to go to Andy's church where they could feel loved and comfortable. And the truth is everybody should feel loved. We should be kind to everybody. But in church, you're not always to make people feel comfortable, okay? We want all people to be loved. We want to be kind. Trust me when I say that. The purpose of church is not to make people feel comfortable. And that's the problem with this whole entire situation. If you can get it down into one word, who said that this child that was confused was supposed to be comfortable? No, we're supposed to lead them to the truth. And there might be some stormy waters in doing that. But they were right at home at Andy Stanley's church because they want everybody to feel comfortable. And then they go on to say later in the video, 75% of people don't fully transition. Like somehow that was good news to everybody and stuff, because a lot of the surgeries aren't successful in getting over to fully transition. It's just the level of brokenness, the level of depravity, like in this video, was beyond shocking. And of course, they highlight at the end of it, the one student who they turned away from their full made-up identity in college. And of course, they're going to highlight the one story. But what about the other stories where the people continued to stay in that gender? Okay, so I want to be very clearly that Andy Stanley should be rebuked publicly for this. He needs to repent. And this could even go as far as a salvation issue, okay? And many people, high-level church leaders, have called him to do so. And at this point, I consider Andy Stanley outside the Christian faith. And it is compassionate to draw lines and say, you went too far. You went too far. I know. I don't know Andy's heart because I don't know him personally. Maybe he started off with good intentions at the start of all of this. Maybe he really did want to help, and somewhere along the line, through sympathy and empathy, ended up saying, like, we need to embrace these people. But many people have suggested maybe Andy is struggling with these gender issues himself. But we don't know that for sure. I don't know Andy. But the truth is he should be rebuked, and he is outside the Christian faith, and he went too far. And I don't recommend anybody go to this church. It is not compassionate to affirm people in their confusion and in their sin.